My name is Betty Holloway, and I'm 29 years old. Once upon a time, I thought love meant patience, that if you gave enough, waited long enough, believed hard enough, the other person would eventually meet you halfway. I was wrong. For 5 years, I stood beside Jonathan Blake, a man I thought I knew better than myself. I was there through every crash and rebuild, when he failed his first business pitch, when he got laid off from the startup that promised him stock options and a future, when he moved back in with his parents for a few months just to reset. Through all of it, I stayed. I believed in him. I worked my 9 to 5 in logistics, brought home steady paychecks, and told him that ambition doesn't have to be loud to be real. He used to laugh, kiss my forehead, and say, "You're my anchor, Betty. You keep me grounded." I didn't realize he meant it as a burden. Everything shifted when Jonathan got his new job marketing coordinator for a tech firm led by a woman named Clara Hughes. He came home glowing. His sentences started changing from we to I. "Clara says my ideas are fresh," he told me one night, sipping his whiskey like he'd just invented fire. "She says I have king energy. You know what that means." I smiled politely, though something inside me tightened. "Maybe it means she's good at flattery," I said softly. He laughed. "You wouldn't get it. It's about drive, Betty. Vision." Vision. I remember that word because it started haunting our conversations. He began dressing differently, talking differently, moving like he was walking through an invisible spotlight. And then came the dinner. It was supposed to be a celebration. Jonathan's father's birthday, his whole family gathered around the long oak table, glasses shining under the chandelier. I brought a bottle of wine and a quiet sense of pride. I'd been part of this family for 5 years, or at least I thought I had. Throughout dinner, Jonathan talked about his new job, his boss, the big world he was finally stepping into. He barely looked at me. When I tried to join in, he brushed me off with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Then his father chuckled between bites of steak and said, "So when are you finally going to make this official? Betty's been with you longer than most wives stay married." The laughter that followed was warm until Jonathan's voice sliced through it. "Dad," he said loud enough for everyone to hear, "I'm a king, and kings don't settle for women like her." The room went still. I heard the clink of silverware the way his mother's hand froze midair. Jonathan leaned back in his chair, grinning. "Betty's sweet, she really is. But I need someone who matches my level now. Someone with ambition." I didn't move. I didn't even blink. The only thing louder than the silence was my heartbeat. His father tried to laugh it off, "Son, that's not," but the damage was done. Everyone was staring at me, waiting for tears, an outburst, something. Instead, I smiled, a small, quiet smile that didn't reach my eyes either. I folded my napkin, placed it neatly on the table, and stood. My chair scraped against the wooden floor, the sound of a line being drawn. "Thank you for dinner," I said, looking straight at his father. The food was wonderful. Then to Jonathan, calm, steady, almost weightless, "I hope your kingdom brings you peace." I turned and walked out. Not a single person stopped me. The night air outside was cold, crisp, almost cleansing. As I opened my car door, I felt the first tear roll down my cheek, not from heartbreak, but from something sharper, recognition. He didn't humiliate me because I was small. He did it because he needed to feel big. I sat behind the wheel for a long time, staring at the house through the windshield. Inside, laughter had resumed, thin Holloway laughter. People pretending not to notice that a quiet woman had just turned into a storm. When I finally drove away, the headlights stretched across the empty road like veins of light, and I whispered to no one in particular, "You're not a king, Jonathan. You're just a boy who mistook cruelty for confidence." The city blurred around me. I didn't know where I was going, only that I was done standing still. That night, something inside me shifted quietly, permanently. I didn't lose Jonathan at that dinner. I lost the illusion that he was ever mine. And in the silence that followed, I found something else, the first fragile piece of myself. The next morning, sunlight slipped through the curtains like nothing had changed. But everything had. The apartment still smelled like his cologne, that sharp citrus kind of arrogance that lingers long after it's gone. His shoes were by the door, his jacket slung over the back of a chair. It looked like he'd come home to a life he didn't deserve. I walked through the rooms one last time, letting my fingertips brush against the walls, the couch, the bookshelf I'd built while he brainstormed his next move. Every piece of furniture in that space had a story, and every story ended with me doing the work. In the kitchen, a half-empty coffee cup sat on the counter beside the note I'd written at dawn. "I've moved out. The keys are under the mat. I hope you find what you're looking for." My handwriting didn't shake. My heart didn't race. There was only stillness, the kind that comes when you finally stop fighting a losing battle. I packed a single suitcase. Not everything, just enough to live. No photos, no keepsakes, not even the framed picture from our anniversary where he kissed my cheek while texting someone else. By noon, I closed the door for the last time. The lock clicked soft final. For a week, I stayed at a small motel off the highway, one of those quiet places where no one asks questions. The hum of the air conditioner was constant, like white noise erasing memories. I slept more than I thought I would, ate when I remembered. I didn't cry, I didn't rage, I just existed a ghost in my own story. And then one evening, sitting on the edge of that creaky motel bed, I turned on my laptop. There it was, the old prototype I'd built years ago, a logistics management software Jonathan once called cute. He said no investor would take a woman seriously in tech. That line used to hurt. Now it fueled me. I renamed the project Holowayan after myself. If he could build kingdoms, I could build empires quietly. Weeks passed. The motel room became my office. My days blurred into lines of code, cold coffee, and cheap takeout. Every keystroke felt like reclaiming something he'd chipped away. Sometimes in the quiet between midnight and dawn, I'd scroll through old messages, not to feel nostalgia, just to remember who I used to be. His name stayed muted in my phone, but that didn't stop the notifications. Jonathan. Are you serious? You're just leaving, Jonathan. We need to talk. Jonathan. You're overreacting. Each one arrived like a pebble hitting glass, small, pointless, unable to break through. I didn't reply, not once. My silence became my revenge. 2 months later, I moved into a tiny apartment downtown. The walls were bare, the furniture minimal, but it was mine. The first night there, I stood by the window watching city lights flicker below 1,000 tiny lives unfolding. And for the first time in years, I felt weightless. I realized something simple yet terrifying. Jonathan had been my gravity, and I had finally escaped his pull. My best friend Naomi came over one evening with pizza and a look that said she'd been dying to ask. So, she said between bites, you're really not going to call him back? I shook my head. There's nothing to say. She smirked. Girl, he's losing it. Saw him at a cafe last week looking like someone stole his reflection. I laughed a small foreign sound. Then I guess we're even. Naomi grinned. Just promise me you're not going to vanish into your laptop forever. I'm not vanishing, I said. I'm building something. And I meant it. Nights grew quieter, softer. Somewhere in that silence, I stopped being angry. Anger meant I still cared, and I didn't. Instead, I started noticing the smaller things, the hum of the refrigerator, the rhythm of my typing, the way morning light curved through the blinds. Peace didn't arrive like a storm. It crept in unnoticed and made itself at home. Then one evening, as I was debugging a section of code, Naomi texted me a screenshot from social media. Jonathan was tagged in a photo arm around Clara Hughes, the woman he once called visionary. The caption read, Power Couple Goals. I stared at it for a moment. Not hurt, not jealous, just fascinated. How fast some people move from pretending to loving. I closed my laptop, whispered to myself, let him have his throne. Because queens don't chase ghosts. They outgrow them. 3 months later, peace had become my new normal. I'd stopped checking social media, stopped wondering where Jonathan was, stopped trying to rewrite what had already been written. My life was small, maybe, but it was mine. Quiet mornings with black coffee and code, late nights with music playing low in the background. Holowayan, my software, was starting to get attention. A logistics firm had just reached out about a trial partnership. I should have been nervous. Instead, I felt alive. Then one Tuesday night around midnight, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Naomi, just one word and a link. Naomi girl. I hesitated before tapping it. The link opened to a long post written by Clara Hughes' assistant, someone I vaguely remembered seeing in a photo once. The headline hit me first. When your boss and your boyfriend ruin your life and each other's. My stomach turned. I started reading. The post was chaos, a firestorm of betrayal and screenshots. Clara had been fired from her company after internal HR complaints. Jonathan had been romantically involved with her during work hours, lying to the team and promising promotions that never existed. The post included photos, blurry, desperate, humiliating. And the worst part, Clara herself had posted her own comment underneath, confirming it all. Apparently, after their affair became public, Jonathan tried to claim she had seduced him. He called her unstable and said she was obsessed. Clara responded by leaking voice messages. In one, Jonathan could be heard whispering, "You're my queen, Clara. Betty was a phase. You're the real thing." I felt the corners of my mouth twitch, not in joy but disbelief. The word queen again. How poetic. The post went viral. By morning, Jonathan's name was trending for all the wrong reasons. His company issued a public statement distancing themselves. His LinkedIn profile disappeared. Naomi called me before sunrise, her voice trembling between outrage and glee. "Did you see it? He's done. Like done. Clara dragged him across the internet. I just sat there on my bed laptop, open a half-drunk cup of tea beside me. My voice was quiet. I saw it. Naomi exhaled, waiting for me to say something cruel, triumphant, but I didn't feel that. It wasn't victory. It was something heavier, closure. Watching him implode was like watching a fire consume a house you'd already moved out of. There's relief, yes, but also sadness for what used to be home. I whispered almost to myself, he built his kingdom on lies. I guess it finally collapsed. That week, the messages started again. Jonathan, I made mistakes. Can we please talk, Jonathan? You're the only person who really knew me. Jonathan, please, Betty. I didn't reply. I didn't even open most of them. Then one message appeared late at night. You won, okay? Is that what you wanted? I stared at the screen for a long time, then typed one line and deleted it before sending. No, I just wanted peace. Because that was the truth. I didn't need him ruined. I needed him gone. One morning, while checking emails for Halloween, I saw something that made me pause. An investor, someone I'd pitched to a year ago, had responded. They wanted a demo. My hands shook. Not from nerves, from gratitude. All those long nights, all that heartbreak had become momentum. In the silence that followed Jonathan's fall, I'd built something that stood on its own. A week later, Naomi dropped by with wine. You're trending, she teased, waving her phone. Someone posted a screenshot of your software pitch. Everyone's talking about how classy you've been through the drama. I blinked. I didn't even post anything. Exactly, she said, smirking. Turns out silence really is power. We laughed, clinked glasses, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I allowed myself to feel proud, not of surviving him, but of rediscovering me. Later that night, I sat on my balcony with the city lights flickering below, thinking of how small the world used to feel when everything revolved around Jonathan. Now it felt infinite. I pulled up my phone, scrolled through old photos, and deleted every trace of him, every picture, every text, every memory preserved in pixels. Each deletion was a breath, a heartbeat of freedom. When I finished, I whispered, "Long live the Queen." Then I smiled, not because he had fallen, but because I finally stood tall. Silence became my favorite sound. No more apologies disguised as manipulation. No more late-night texts that started with "I miss you" and ended with blame. No more Jonathan. Or so I thought. The first sign he hadn't truly vanished came on a rainy Friday afternoon. I was working on Halloween's first beta launch when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. "Betty, it's me. Please, I just want to talk." I stared at it unmoved, deleted it. A few minutes later, another message arrived, this time longer, desperate, messy. "I know you saw what happened online. You don't understand. Clara twisted everything. I lost my job, my apartment. Everyone turned their back on me. You always believed in me before. Please don't do this now." Before. That word made me pause. The way he said it, as if my belief was an endless resource he could always return to. I didn't reply. By evening, he called. I didn't answer. He called again and again. The sound of his name flashing across my screen used to send a spark through me. Now it just made my stomach turn. I muted him. The following week, my mom called, her voice careful, like she was walking barefoot over glass. "Sweetheart, Jonathan called me. He sounded lost." I sighed. "He's always lost, Mom. He just calls it destiny." He said he wanted to apologize. Said you won't take his calls. "That's because I don't need an apology. I need peace." There was silence. Then she said I told him not to call again. I smiled faintly. Good. Let him sit in the silence he earned. But Jonathan didn't stop. He started reaching out to Naomi, to my old coworkers, even commenting on my LinkedIn posts with fake encouragements. "So proud of what you've built, Betty. I always knew you had it in you." Naomi texted me a screenshot with a single message. "Girl, this man has no shame." I replied. "None. That's how he survives." I learned something in those weeks. Silence hurts narcissists more than insults ever could. It doesn't give them fuel. It starves them. Every time I ignored him, he seemed to lose another piece of himself. And me, I was growing. Halloween's beta launch was a success. The software caught attention for its clean interface and precise logistics algorithms. A small tech publication wrote an article calling it "The Quiet Giant Startup, Led by an Even Quieter Woman." Quiet, I like that word. Because power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it hums beneath the surface until it shakes the ground. Then came the night Naomi dragged me out to celebrate. A rooftop bar, downtown music floating through warm air, the skyline glinting like a promise. She raised her glass. To freedom, to money, and to the fact that your ex is probably crying into instant noodles right now. I laughed genuinely freely. You're terrible. That's why you love me. We toasted the clink of glasses, echoing like punctuation to the sentence I'd been waiting to finish for years. On the way home, I got one last message. It wasn't a text this time, it was a voicemail. His voice was cracked, exhausted, and dripping with self-pity. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry, Betty. You didn't deserve what I said. You were good to me, better than I ever was to you. I thought I wanted more, but I lost everything. I know you probably hate me, but I still think about you. Every day. There was a long pause, a shaky inhale. If you ever want to talk, I'll be waiting. He ended it there. I listened once, then deleted it. The next morning, I renamed my company officially Holloway & Systems. When I filed the trademark, I smiled at the symbolism. I had been the keeper of someone else's dreams for too long. Now I guarded my own. Months passed, seasons changed, my world expanded while his shrank into whispers and rumors. Occasionally I'd hear fragments, Jonathan working odd jobs, moving from city to city trying to rebuild, but he wasn't my problem anymore. He was a cautionary tale. Some nights I'd stand by my window, city lights flickering like embers, and think about how strange it is, how people can love you, use you, and blame you all in the same breath. And yet the silence that used to ache now felt like luxury. Then one day, Naomi sent me a text. Guess who's going to be at Megan's wedding next weekend? I stared at the screen. Don't tell me. Oh, I'm telling you, the king himself. For the first time in months, I didn't feel dread, just curiosity. Because this time, I wasn't the same girl who walked out of that dinner with tears in her eyes. This time, the queen wasn't leaving the table. She was walking in. The afternoon sunlight hit the church windows like gold dust, scattering across the floor in warm streaks. The air smelled faintly of lilies and champagne. Laughter floated through the courtyard, that easy kind that comes from people who've never had to rebuild themselves from ashes. I stood at the edge of the crowd, a soft smile tugging at my lips. I wasn't nervous, not anymore. I'd been through worse battles than small talk and finger food. Naomi elbowed me gently. There he is, 2 o'clock near the buffet. I turned. Jonathan. He looked smaller. The sharp confidence that once clung to him like cologne was gone. His suit didn't fit quite right, too loose, like he'd lost both weight and direction. His hair was longer, unkempt, his eyes searching the room for validation that never came. For a moment I didn't recognize him. Not the man who'd once sat across from me telling me he was a king. He noticed me then. His entire posture shifted, a flicker of disbelief, a half smile, trying to resurface. Betty, he said, walking to Holloway, me voice low, rehearsed. I didn't move. I just watched him calm as still water. Up close, the cracks were clearer, the tremble in his jaw, the slight stutter when he spoke. You look incredible, he said finally. You've changed. I tilted my head. No, I just stopped shrinking. He laughed Hollowayly, looking around. Guess I deserved that. Yes, I said simply. You did. We stood there for a moment, surrounded by the soft chaos of a wedding clinking glasses music, the hum of distant joy. He exhaled. I've been meaning to reach out again, but I figured you'd block me. I did. He blinked. Oh! The silence stretched between us. I just wanted to tell you I'm sorry, he said, eyes glassy. That night at dinner, what I said, I was trying to impress them. To sound confident, I didn't mean it. I smiled small and cold. You meant every word. You just didn't expect to regret them. He swallowed. I lost everything, Betty. The job, Clara, my reputation. I guess I thought I was chasing something bigger. Turns out I was just running away from myself. I met his eyes, and from me. He nodded slowly. Yeah, from you. For the first time, his voice wasn't arrogant. It was fragile, thin. The sound of someone realizing too late that they'd burned the bridge that led home. He took a small step closer. I heard about Holloway & Systems. You did it, huh? I did. I'm proud of you. I let out a quiet breath that could have been a laugh. No, you're not. You're just shocked I did it without you. He flinched. Betty, I'm serious. You were always the smart one. I see that now. I don't expect anything. I miss you. I looked at him, really looked. Not the man I used to love, not the ghost who haunted my silence, but just another flawed human being who'd built his life on illusions. You don't miss me, I said softly. You miss the version of yourself you saw through my eyes. His face fell. The words landed the way truth always does, quiet but irreversible. He tried again. Can we at least talk sometime? Grab coffee, maybe. I shook my head gently. Jonathan, that chapter's done. You said you were a king. I believed you. And like every king who forgets his crown, you lost your kingdom. He exhaled sharply. You're really not going to give me a chance. I met his gaze, calm, unwavering. I already gave you 5 years of them. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The music swelled from inside the hall. The bride and groom were dancing, spinning in the golden light. Jonathan looked at me one last time, eyes filled with the ache of someone who finally understood what they threw away. I smiled, not cruelly, not triumphantly, but with peace. Take care, Jonathan. And then I turned away. As I walked through the courtyard, the world seemed brighter somehow, not because of him, but because of everything he no longer dimmed. Naomi caught up to me, eyes wide. Did he try to talk? Of course, I said. Kings always think they can summon their queens back. She grinned. And what did you do? I reminded him I built my own throne. Later that night, I stood by my apartment window, watching the city pulse beneath me. Somewhere out there, Jonathan was probably staring at an empty phone screen, replaying his mistakes. But I didn't hate him. I didn't love him either. I just let him go, completely. Because closure isn't revenge, it's freedom. I whispered into the quiet queens, don't wait for crowns. They make their own. And for the first time in years, I felt weightless.